Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California are trying to criminalize investigative journalism. Why would they want to do that? Let me tell you more. So 23-year-old YouTuber and investigative journalist with a GoPro, Nick Shirley, well, he's uncovered some of the biggest alleged fraud in both Minnesota and now California. Just weeks after his latest expose in California on hospice fraud came out, well, the California legislature is trying to make what he did illegal. Let's hear this. California and the legislature is now advancing a bill that would criminalize investigative journalism with misdemeanors, $10,000 fines, and imprisonment. This bill, titled AB 2624, again, has advanced through the session in California. And now, under this bill, government-funded entities like the Somali Learning Center that was exposed by Nick and his team in Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz, well, they would be protected after it was exposed that they were doing all kinds of alleged fraud. So as Nick tweets here, when our politicians would rather protect fraudsters and illegal immigrants versus investigative journalism trying to uncover fraud, well, we have a big problem, and he's exactly right. He's not the only one that has voiced a concern. In fact, Elon Musk followed up on this expose, saying that California legislators are trying to make this investigation of fraud illegal altogether. When I tell you the particulars of this bill, it's going to blow your mind. So Nick Shirley, as you recall, this is where he's been going through in his most recent expose out in Los Angeles. And what he was doing was trying to understand how both voting rolls and fraudulent claims with hospice centers became an issue. And in fact, the Trump administration has since launched a massive investigation parlaying with what Nick uncovered. It was huge. It was very compressed, and it was all under Gavin Newsom's watch. But again, why would anybody in a public office have any concerns with the First Amendment protected rights of an investigative journalist, a 23-year-old with a GoPro that's just trying to find out where potential fraud is coming into play with our taxpayer-funded dollars? Seems totally reasonable, but it's not with California Democrats. So, the particulars of what Nick uncovered is potentially $170 million in California fraud. The video, actually, I just showed you, it got over 7.7 million views. So this bill would demand that video that Nick Shirley and his team took, that it would have to be taken down. Then Nick Shirley could potentially get fined and could also have the potential of jail time. So the lady that proposed this bill, Mia Bonta, this is an Assemblywoman from California, well, her husband is the California AG. Sounds a little interesting. So just days after Nick Shirley published this video, the AG in California announced that he has his own $267 million Medi-Cal fraud investigation that's also going forward with arrests. So where is this disconnect between investigative journalists like Nick partnering with attorney generals trying to uncover fraud? Well, clearly, Assemblywoman Mia Bonta doesn't have an issue with this. But also, who else doesn't have an issue? Well, this is the amount of minutes that the national news, both ABC and NBC, have donated towards this alleged fraud in Gavin Newsom's California. 0 minutes. So investigative journalists like Nick Shirley get out on YouTube and X and other alternate platforms, while the national news media just isn't covering the story. But this isn't a made up story because, again, the AG in California has put facts to this that they have their own $267 million investigation. But why is this? Why does rather this California Assemblywoman and other Democrats who have voted to advance this bill, why do they feel so threatened? So again, this is from the California Globe. The bill, again, would criminalize investigative journalists for violating the privacy for immigration support service providers. Well, that's interesting. So their tact is that this is a privacy issue for people that shouldn't be here anyways, and potentially people who are committing fraud. Well, that's just very California. This is also an attempt, and this is from Carl DeMaio, who there's two names that I want you to pay attention to in this article. DeMaio is a Republican who's trying his best to counter narrative this bill that's advanced. Whereas Bonta, this lady here, is the person that sponsored the bill. So again, DeMaio is the Republican. And what he said is true, is that this bill is trying to silence citizen journalists and to shield taxpayer-funded organizations from any public scrutiny. He's exactly right. To continue, the California legislature, through this legislation, is trying to ban also awareness and activities by law enforcement. In fact, just recently, the California Assembly again advanced a bill that would make it difficult, if not illegal, for ICE officers to get involved in identifying fraud as they have their border enforcement and illegal immigration activities going forward. So California is trying to put all of these barriers around this alleged fraud, have it be with immigrants or not, doesn't matter. But they're trying to position this as a privacy issue and a safety issue for those illegal immigrants. This bill was also interestingly sponsored by the Women's Foundation of California and a Policy Institute and the Coalition for Humane Immigration Rights of Los Angeles. So again, the NGOs are sponsoring these immigrant service providers who are then getting in the way of investigative journalists like Nick Shirley. See the problem? Soros-sponsored dark money and other dark money funnels into NGOs, puts a barrier up to identify alleged fraud, and then criminalizes anybody who's trying to make an attempt to uncover this fraud. California is really the leading edge of this progressive mentality where they just don't want anybody looking around at what they're up to. So Bonta, again, the lady that's advanced this bill and authored this bill, this is how she describes what this is all about. AB 2624, it strengthens the protections for individuals working in immigrant service roles, including the nonprofit staff, volunteers, etc., who may face risks such as doxing, harassment, or threats due to the nature of their work. There's not been one instance that the left can point to where any of the safety of the people that work for the NGOs is at risk. In fact, it's been the opposite. Journalists like Nick Shirley have had to hire mass amounts of private security as they go around trying to do their journalism. Nick Shirley's been very transparent with that. In fact, just over the weekend, there was a young lady that was trying to do a news story sponsored by Turning Point USA at an immigration facility, and she was physically assaulted by some of the leftist protesters there. So if anybody's risk of security or anybody's risk of harm or doxing is at play, it's actually, again, the people that are trying to uncover what's going on. So Nick Shirley, again, James O'Keefe, who is also very involved in trying to uncover some of the voter roll issues in California, they're all at play here. They would be criminals and fined if they continue after this bill or if this bill gets signed. So what does this all wrap up about? This is about established NGOs coordinating with public leaders who are trying to make it difficult, if not criminalize, anyone who's trying to take the veil back, understand what's going on, and to investigate alleged fraud. This is disgusting. This is what could happen at the national level because, again, this is a test in California. They very well may get this bill through, but there's no question that this is going to be a larger federal or Supreme Court issue because it's a direct assault on the First Amendment and journalists. And that's exactly what the gentleman, the Republican Carl DeMaio, says. As he outlines here, California Democrats are trying to intimidate citizen watchdog journalists and to protect waste and fraud from happening in far left-wing NGOs. This bill can only be described as the Stop Nick Shirley Act, a bill that's designed to silence citizen journalists from exposing fraud and abuse of taxpayer dollars. And he's exactly right. There's no other way to look at this, no other conclusion. If this bill becomes law, the message is clear to every journalist in California that's trying to expose alleged fraud. You will be punished. It's unconstitutional, this bill. There's no question it is. And it's a direct assault on our ability to have transparency with our taxpayer-funded dollars and with the First Amendment. There's no question that DeMaio is correct. So that's where we are with the Stop Nick Shirley Act. This is the leading edge of what the Democrats want to do nationally. They want to stop anybody that's asking questions. Gavin Newsom's yet to publicly put his name on this, but he's also been very hesitant in admitting the level of alleged fraud that's happening in California. So keep your eye on this story because, again, this is a beta test. This is also a test going into the 2028 presidential election. Why? Well, because Gavin Newsom is the lead candidate for the Democrats. So under his watch, his legislators are creating a legal environment for people like Nick Shirley and others to just ask questions, to try to do what investigative journalists should do. And most importantly, what the national media should be doing as well, because they're not doing their jobs. So that's the latest on the Nick Shirley Act. And if you've yet to subscribe to America First Alerts, we'd love to have you along. Please do so, like this video and share it. We need to get this type of news story out because as you can see, the national news just isn't covering it. Our very next story is fascinating. We're going to transition over to the Middle East and the specifics of the economic issues that Iran is going to be facing now and for the next 8 days of Donald Trump's U.S. Navy blockade in Iran. All of those details are coming up next. You're not going to want to miss this video. It's right here.